For the one who followed the channel since last summer, you know that it was not the best one for me. Had plenty of issue with the car and decided that I had enough. I also decided that it would be time to add a little bit more power to the car. So I had a big project for this winter. First off, I'm gonna redo my engine harness. Secondly, I'm switching to a Link ECU standalone. So with the new ECU, I'm gonna run a couple more sensors like oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel pressure, and also flex fuel. So I'm gonna be able to run the car on ethanol to add more power and more safety. So first step, I'm gonna remove my crusty ass engine harness. I bought this engine harness when I did the swap like a couple of years ago. It was a used one and never been in a perfect condition. So I'm gonna go through the whole engine harness and I'm gonna wrap it in DR-25 heat shrink so it's well protected from the heat, all the oil that can be on the engine harness. So once the harness is off the car, I'm gonna skin the whole thing. To run the car on E85, I had to switch to bigger injectors. I went with Injector Dynamic 1050X. They are 1085cc injectors. So of course, I had to switch the pigtail on the engine harness. I plan also to fish every new sensor in the main engine harness, so I don't have like free wires going through the engine bay. This is the original wire from the oil pressure switch. I'm gonna deepen the wire from the ECU plug and use the other side to plug my new oil temp/pressure sensor. And here you see the engine harness part of the expansion loom harness that I'm gonna show you later. I also bought this all effect Acuity TPS sensor, so let's install that too. Now we attack the ECU side of the wiring. The ECU is plug and play with the R6 engine harness. You can also purchase the expansion loom that lets you have all these extra input/output. My plan is to cut the expansion loom and use my Dutch plug so it can be disconnected since the extra wires will run into the main engine harness. For the 0.5 volt and the ground part, I'm gonna do a splitted plug. If I ever need to add some sensor at that point, all I'm gonna need to do is to add wires onto the other side of the plug. I ended up removing the heat shrinks around the two individual expansion looms and put them together. I also did a plexiglass ECU cover just because I had some left. So this is the wire to connect into your laptop. This is my expansion looms. This is for my future digital dash. There will be a separate video in the future for that. And this is for my AEM CAN connected O2 sensor. So once I was done with all that, it was time to test fit everything into the car. I had to make sure to where exactly I wanted to route my engine harness and that everything worked fine before wrapping the engine harness into DR-25. So I called my tuner so he could remote first start the car.
Je pense qu'elle est déconnectée là.
Ah ouais, ça va pas y être.
Ok.
Yes sir, tu peux y aller. En plus d'ajustement.
Ouais, je comprends.
Once I was sure that everything worked fine, it was finally time to deepin every connector from the engine harness. But first, I marked every wires and every plug, took pictures of every plug with their wire identified. I also measured every part of the harness and made a diagram on my computer. This way I'll be sure that every pigtail have the correct length and position before wrapping. Now, it's finally time to reloom the harness. I decided to use the starter wire as a base, since it's the biggest wire in the harness. I also ran the crank sensor signal wire right in the middle of the harness, so it will be protected from interference, followed by every other sensible sensor wire signals, then right over with the grounds, and following with the rest of the wires. that the main part of the harness is loomed, I'm gonna be wrapping the wires with Kevlar lace, so the wire stays in place but also have a certain flexibility. The fact that I'm twisting the harness wires like this means that some wires will indeed have to be extended. So after a couple days of looming, here's the unwrapped final harness. Now the fun part starts. I finally need to wrap the whole thing in DR-25. As you can see, I use some electrical tape so the harness pin will not be in the way when I try to slide the heat shrink on. That makes it way easier. You know, sometimes in life you try to insert things inside of other things and it doesn't work, but trust me, there's always another way. Once I wrap the whole harness, it's time to rip in the plugs. There it is, finally. If you wonder why there's some big pieces of each ring close to the plugs, it's because I plan to seal every plug back in with adhesive each ring. You can also spot some clear pieces of each rings. It is so I can add some labeling for every plug. I plan to do this after the dyno tune so I don't have to rip it apart if there's something wrong.